Do you actually know anything about Harriet Tubman? Happy Women's History Month and Harriet Tubman Day. Today we're going to be talking about the most famous conductor of the Underground Railroad. Harriet was born in 1822 into slavery as Araminta Ross to Harriet Green Ross and Benjamin Ross as one of 9 children. She was born in Dorchester County, Maryland. I'll be referring to her as Harriet Tubman throughout this, even though she was born as Araminta, just to avoid confusion. Her father was free, but her mother wasn't. So she and her siblings were enslaved. It was passed down through the mother. The Ross's enslaver, Edward Rhodus, did not allow the family to stay together and purposely split them up on different working assignments. Starting at the age of 6, Tubman was sent to work as a babysitter for nearby overseers. Her life was forever changed at the age of 13 when, while she was running errands at a local store, she witnessed another enslaved person's attempted escape. She refused to assist the freedom seeker's enslaver in capturing the fugitive. As the enslaver became desperate in their attempt to recapture the freedom seeker, he threw a 2-pound weight. Rather than hitting the intended target, he struck Tubman in the back of the head and fractured her skull. Tubman was nursed back to health by her mother, but experienced chronic pain from headaches and uncontrollable bouts of seizures, which Tubman herself referred to as sleeping spells. Historians now know that she suffered from narcolepsy. It is important to note that narcolepsy was a prominent part of both her identity and story. Vivid visions of freedom came to her while experiencing these seizures. As a result of her visions, her disability is often associated with her religiosity. However, Tubman's dedication to her faith and her experience with chronic pain hold equal weight. Historian Deirdre Cooper Owens spoke to the importance of Tubman's disability in her essay Harriet Tubman's Disability and Why It Matters. Cooper Owens highlighted that she offered up a version of freedom where a disabled black woman sat at the center of it, where black women were liberators and where liberation was communal and democratic. After her injury, she was sent back to work in the fields, and Tubman recounted, "There I worked with the blood and sweat rolling down my face till I couldn't see." She was determined to have at least some autonomy and negotiated with her enslaver to choose her own work assignments. Now, I wasn't able to find out how she negotiated exactly, but she was able to. She hired herself out on her own terms, choosing which work assignments she wanted to do. In an unexpected turn of events, one assignment required her to work alongside her father in the timber fields. Not only did this allow her to spend time with him despite years of separation, but also to work alongside black sailors. These sailors traveled up and down the East Coast frequently and had essential geographical knowledge and connections that they shared with Tubman, and assisted her in tapping into a network of those also seeking liberation. Around this time, she met her future husband, Freedman John Tubman. The couple married in 1844 when Tubman was 22 years old. She changed her name upon their marriage to Harriet after her mother and took his last name, Tubman. Her enslaver found himself in debt and struggling financially by 1849. Seeking to sell some of his slaves to make some money, she feared that she and her brothers would be sold and set her sights on freedom. Harriet developed a route with her brothers, and while on the journey, the trio caught word that Eliza Rhodus, Rhodus's widow, placed an ad in the paper calling for their return. Tubman's brothers decided to return to the plantation for fear of capture and subsequent punishment. Not the slightest bit discouraged, the visions that came to Tubman during narcoleptic bouts assured her that she would be free. She pressed onward alone, guided to Pennsylvania by the stars. Now, she escaped to Pennsylvania, and in Philadelphia, she made connections with abolitionists, namely William Still, a conductor on the Underground Railroad. Tubman learned more about the Underground Railroad from Still. Often misunderstood as a railroad with tracks and trains, the Underground Railroad actually refers to various safe houses in which abolitionists provided sanctuary for freedom seekers. Conductors led the journeys to freedom, while station masters hosted freedom seekers within their homes, churches, or other safe spaces. The more Tubman learned, the more her desire to see her family free grew. She decided to return for them in 1850. She was successful on her first and second trip while bringing her family and friends to freedom. On her third trip in 1851, Tubman returned for her husband, John. She quickly discovered that he thought she was dead and had remarried. John's new wife was pregnant. She offered to take them to freedom anyways, but John refused, probably because he didn't want to risk it. Let's talk a little bit about Harriet on these journeys. She devised clever techniques that helped make her forays successful, including using the master's horse and buggy for the first leg of the journey, leaving on a Saturday night since runaway notices couldn't be placed in newspapers until Monday morning, turning about and heading south if she encountered possible slave hunters, and carrying a drug to use on a baby if its crying might put the fugitives in danger. Tubman even carried a gun, which she used to threaten the fugitives if they became too tired or decided to turn back, telling them, "You'll be free or die." Now, the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 changed the tactic for many conductors. The act stipulated that it was illegal for any citizen to assist an escaped slave and demanded that if an escaped slave was sighted, he or she should be apprehended and turned into the authorities for deportation back to the rightful owner down south. Any United States Marshal who refused to return a runaway slave would pay a hefty penalty of $1,000. Many freedom seekers opted to flee to Canada instead of the northern U.S. as a result. Tubman conducted 11 trips from Maryland to St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, between 1850 and 1860. All of these journeys, 19 in total, over the years made Tubman a hero, with many African Americans, both free and enslaved, dubbing her Moses after the biblical figure. She brought over 70 people to freedom, including her own parents, in 1857. Initially, she stayed with them in Canada, but returned to settle in Auburn, New York. Auburn was a hotbed of abolition and felt like an ideal place for Tubman and her family to settle. Frances Seward, abolitionist wife of Senator William H. Seward, offered Tubman land in Auburn. This further encouraged the family to stay. Though Tubman had her freedom, the fight for liberation of the enslaved still called to her. Tubman also spoke proudly of her accomplishments and famously stated, "I never ran my train off the track and I never lost a passenger." She was widely celebrated in her community, but became a huge target for enslavers. Many called for her capture, with bounties upwards of $40,000, which would be approximately $1,500,000 in today's money. Now we're going to be talking about her involvement with John Brown and the Civil War. In about 1857 or 1858, she met John Brown, the famous abolitionist, and helped him plan his raid on Harper's Ferry. She provided geographical knowledge and recruited people to assist. Tubman and Brown formed a close friendship, with Brown dubbing her General Tubman. She once claimed to have seen him in many of her narcoleptic dreams before meeting him. The raid unfortunately failed, as many of you know, and Brown was captured and hanged, but not many people know about Tubman's involvement. In 1861, when the Civil War broke out, she enlisted as a nurse, and then in 1863, she took on a role as a scout and organized a group of spies. Tubman helped Colonel James Montgomery coordinate the Combahee River Raid in South Carolina, which aimed to harass whites and rescue freed slaves. The raid was wildly successful, with Montgomery's troops burning down many plantations and freeing approximately 750 enslaved people. She's recognized as the first woman in U.S. history to both plan and lead a military raid. And in June 2021, the Army inducted her into the Military Intelligence Corps. During her time in the Army, she met her second husband, Nelson Davis, and they married in 1869. They built a family home in Auburn and lived out the rest of their days there, and the home is still standing to this day. Tubman also founded the Home for the Aged in Auburn, an institution that provided care for those with paralysis, epilepsy, and those with vision impairment and blindness. She was a staunch supporter of the suffrage movement, and she worked closely with New York feminists like Lucretia Mott, Susan B. Anthony, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. The interests of abolitionists were aligned closely with those of suffragists, with both movements concerned with autonomy and freedom. Her husband died in 1888, and she dedicated the rest of her life to philanthropy. And in 1913, at the age of 91, Harriet Tubman died of pneumonia in the Home for the Aged and Indigent. In her final words, she stated, "I go away to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you also may be." She was laid to rest in the Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn. Her legacy remains relevant to this day. In 2024, literally last year, the United States Mint launched the 2024 Harriet Tubman Commemorative Coin Program. On Veterans Day that same year, the governor of Maryland recognized Tubman as one of the greatest authors of the American story, and posthumously named Tubman a one-star brigadier general. There is a reason why so many people want her on the $20 bill instead of Andrew Jackson. She's an amazing woman, and not many people know anything about her outside of the fact that she was part of the Underground Railroad. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you haven't already, please go check out the first two parts below. I've gone ahead and linked them in the description there, and then follow me if you want more history lessons.